All right, welcome back to another episode of the Investing with TJ show. Thanks again for watching, and welcome to everyone who is new and got this channel above 9,800 yesterday. It really helps the channel when you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button to get out to more people, because hopefully we can get close to that valued 10K level. Now, the real reason why Elon Musk selling his shares, in my view, has to do with inflation. Now, there are a lot of things that probably went into his decision making. Most things in life are multivariate, but I do think maybe a large weighting in his decision making had to do with inflation. Now, I at first need to explain something to you. Many CEOs routinely sell at the end of the year for tax purposes. That's just something they do. Now, many people are noticing that CEOs and insiders are selling at record levels. A part of that has to do with the just pure valuations of their companies at these pretty high levels. Now, many people, analysts, have said these levels are too insane. They're way too high. They need to come down. They need to be repriced. Well, I think we might be starting to see the beginning of that. And a part of that is the chickens coming home to roost, which is what comes from the increase in the money supply. We're at the point now where Jerome Powell has said things like inflation, we need to retire the word transitory. We even have Geeta Gopinath. She is the chief economist of the IMF. She had routinely been saying things like inflation is transitory. And now she tweeted and said inflation is likely to be higher for longer than previously thought, and significant variation in inflation pressures across countries. If you scroll down to this graphic, a lot of inflationary pressures are being experienced by emerging markets here, which is not too surprising. But as far as advanced economies, the core inflation in the US is pretty high above where the central bank target is. For the UK, it's higher, but it's not as bad as the US. So higher prices are to be expected. Now, when many people think about CPI and inflation, they think about their burdens and the burdens of individuals, but they don't really think about companies, unless you're thinking about the producer price index. Now, inflation will have an impact on companies, because at the end of the day, how they value or how they price the inventory they have, a part of that has to do with either the cost of purchasing that product or the price of conversion, which means you get raw materials and you convert them in the manufacturing process. That is a input cost for their final product. What's also part of the final product is delivery. And you think about what goes into delivery. Well, you need to actually pump the gas and get it from point A to point B. Well, gas has been going up as well. So you start thinking about all these things and how those input costs have been rising over time. It's the same product they've always been making, but the input costs have now been rising in their inventory. Now, the additional part of this is when you think about Elon Musk and you think about Tesla, you have to think about how they value their inventory. There's different ways you can value inventory. There's first in, first out, which means the inventory that came in first will be the inventory that will be sold first. You can have last in, first out, which is the last inventory that came in will be the first that will be sold out. You can have average weighted inventory. Then you can have specific identification. Now, Tesla chooses to use LIFO. LIFO is interesting because in a time of rising costs, LIFO valued inventory basically means that your costs of goods sold, your costs to sell your cost of revenue, cost of sales, actually increases. Think about it. As prices rise, if the first inventory that goes out is the last that came in, well, the input costs that were most current, the last that came in, are they going to be the first that go out? If they've been rising, that means your cost of goods sold will rise, which means your profit margins will be less. Now, a lot of here's the interesting thing. The only companies who can really use LIFO are companies that operate under U.S. GAAP accounting practices. Pretty much, if you're under IFRS, which is for a lot of international companies, they don't use that. They use FIFO or they use others. But a lot of American companies, I think it's about 38% of the S&P 500, I believe, uses LIFO. So when you think about that, especially when Tesla's, one of the largest weighted companies in the S&P 500, they're going to have to deal with thinner margins, gross profit, that will likely, if you're thinking about Tesla's price this coming year or its performance this coming year, it may be a little bit less than what it was in 2021. That is, unless they can raise their prices and people will accept them. That's something that, is also another another thing to consider. But what we do know is that their costs are going to be rising. And in response to that, I think that the amount that Elon Musk has been selling is likely due to those inflationary pressures that Tesla will be, or maybe currently is experiencing, with developing their inventory and their product. So that's my view as far as why I think Elon Musk is selling, and maybe a lot of other CEOs who again in the U.S. are using LIFO, and they're going to be dealing with these rising costs, which means, and especially if they're using LIFO, they are going to have to deal with, in this coming year, maybe thinner margins than what they experienced last year. Now, here's something that they can do. They can do something called LIFO liquidation, which means that the LIFO layers, I don't want to keep throwing these words out here, but basically when you have, when you're doing LIFO, last in, first out, the inventory that remains is the oldest inventory. So what some of these people can do is, well, hey, we have some of this old inventory over here, and it's not that expensive. It's not as expensive as making product now. Let's just lower the amount of, you could say purchases or manufacturing of product now. Let's lower that and let's just sell a lot of that older product because it was cheaper for us when we either purchased it or manufactured it. And that way we can keep our margins pretty wide. Now, that's something that you could possibly do. Will Elon Musk do that? Well, the interesting thing is that Elon Musk is actually, he has cost cutting on his mind right now, which is pretty interesting, just given the fact of everything I said. Tesla shares rise after Elon Musk urges employees to cut delivery costs. Again, those shares rose because you're thinking, well, hey, if you can get those delivery costs down, that'll help your margins. Now, again, that's different than LIFO liquidation, but the fact that he has cost cutting on his mind and getting delivery costs down, because again, as I said, delivery costs are part of inventory, the cost of your product that you're selling. If that's on his mind, then maybe he might also be considering, hey, maybe we can sell some of this older product too as well. Because remember, hey, last year, or actually in January of 2021, Elon Musk actually said, hey, get rid of as many of the Model S's and some of these others out of storage. We just need to sell them. Just get rid of them. So, potentially he may be. I mean, if he's done that in the past, he may be thinking about doing that in the future. So I don't know, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I don't know if he will do that, but I do think that inflation is on his mind when it comes to selling his personal shares. So please hit that subscribe button down below. Please hit the like button. Let me know what you think about all this, your opinions. Am I off, or am I kind of on the money? Am I getting close to the money, but I'm not on the money? Let me know. Thanks again. It's Investing with TJ.